Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another 1/12 scale figure unboxing and review video. Now today we are taking a look at something from a new company, at least to me personally, and that's of course amazing Yamaguchi. Now they have been on my radar for quite some time because I find the premise very interesting. For those who don't know, the whole purpose of this line is to pack as much articulation and posability into the figures as possible. They're not necessarily worrying about proportions or realism or a seamless look. Their whole purpose for existing is to make an impact on your shelf. So yeah, I'm curious as to how that's going to work in figure format. Now we are starting off with Iron Spider, but if y'all do like these videos, let me know and I'll pick up more from the line. Now if you are looking to grab the Iron Spider, he is available from toyswonderland.com. I have included the link down in the description below, and they do have 12-month installment plans if you are a fan of paying off your figures over time. What we are going to do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. Here of course we have the box art for Iron Spider. Now it's done in this very interesting but very busy comic book style aesthetic. We do have a lot going on here. We've got an image of Iron Spider right up here on the front with a bunch of comic panels in the background. You of course can see the figure himself, another shot of him in a dynamic pose on the side, and a ton more on the back, once again with a bit of comic book artwork behind it. Now you do have various little word bubbles with some quotes from Spidey, and you can also see all of the bits and pieces that come included. One of the cool things about the way that Yamaguchi does their packages is that on all of the inside flaps you do have a little bit more artwork, and it's all varied. It's not the same between the various panels. I do have to say a huge thank you to Robo from The Foosh for pointing that out in his Yamaguchi videos. Now there is also this background diorama style piece, although it's just an image of Iron Spider, so I don't really see myself using that in the background when the figure himself is actually Iron Spider. I wouldn't have minded per se if it was like a city skyline sort of diorama, but that still is a really nice image. Now, all of the various bits and pieces are taped to the back of the box, so it's going to be a little bit challenging to remove them on camera, but let's start off with the figure himself. And here we have him. As I said in the intro, they're not really focusing on proportions or seamlessness, they are simply going for the maximum range of motion, and you can totally tell that here. He looks all kinds of funky. What we are going to do now though is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Here we have all the bits and pieces that come with Spidey. Now, starting off with the display base first, it's a relatively interesting and very versatile design. You have multiple different points where you can install the dynamic flight pole, and you do have a waist clamp up on top. But if you want an even sturdier connection, you can remove it, and then bringing in Spidey, he has a porthole in the back that you can peg that directly into, as I said, for an even sturdier connection. Now you do get 4 of his spider legs. These are really nicely sculpted and painted with this darker gold and then a lighter color as well, and they are fully articulated. They're using multiple little Revoltech joints on the inside. They aren't ratcheted like I remember Revoltech joints being. I'm pretty sure this is a more modern style. They're just super stiff, and you do hear a little bit of squeaking when you go moving them around. You do get a ton of spare of these little joints, so if you happen to break one or simply need more, you have some at your disposal. Now you can actually do a couple of different combinations when it comes to the spider arms. Using these little pieces and a spare joint, you can combine them so he has 4 on his back rather than 3. You can also put multiple arms together and use that same piece to have a multi-jointed pincer on the top of the spider arms. I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be going with that. I'll probably just use 3 and have it more comic book accurate, but you do get 4 if that's something you'd like to do. These are of course those multi-jointed pieces, so it converts one Revoltech joint to two, so you can technically use them in pretty much any combination that you see fit. You also get two of these kind of web-like effects. They aren't the most web-looking in my opinion, but they will definitely get the job done. And then bringing in the hand, you do have a port on the inside of the palm, so you can peg it in and make it look like he's shooting it. Unfortunately, fresh out of the box, some of these little peg ports are a little bit stiff, but trust me, work it in there and the effect will definitely be worthwhile. Kind of really like the way that looks. As for hands, you do have a fairly decent array. They all do have paint on the outside of the palm with a nice vibrant gold, and the sculpt is very, very dynamic, much like the figure himself. What we are going to do now, though, is get Iron Spider out here and take a closer look. And here we have him, standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. And you might just be sitting there thinking, Justin, what on earth is this monstrosity? And yeah, I don't blame you, there is a lot going on here. And in terms of pretty action figures, this doesn't really rank up there when he's standing just in a neutral pose. But, as I've said a couple of times already, he was never meant to be a pretty action figure in a museum stance. This guy is made for posing. So yeah, he looks kind of weird, he looks kind of goofy. This is what you're asking for when you tell a company to specifically focus on articulation. For those wondering why Hot Toys figures don't simply just focus on posability, it's because they'd end up looking like this in a neutral stance, which isn't all that accurate to how a real person actually looks. They've made changes and concessions here to get this thing to move as much as possible. So hopefully this gives you a better idea what a figure solely focused on this particular cause does end up looking like. What we are going to do now though is take him off the rotating turntable, punch in and take a closer look at the details. Here we have him up close and personal. Now as you can see, I have taken the liberty of installing 3 of his spider legs. You do have the option of going for a 4th, but just like in the accessory segment, you'll have to use that little multi-combiner port piece to add that last leg. I personally will be going with 3 in my display just because it's, of course, the comic book accurate look. Now, as I said just a second ago, this guy looks all kinds of funky. There is a ton of sculpted in musculature on the surface here. There are a ton of gaps in the joints and he looks kind of weird. But I'm not holding that against the figure because he wasn't designed to be the perfect looking figure just standing straight up and down. He was designed to have a ton of range of motion. So when we get to the posing section at the end of the video for the conclusion, hopefully you'll see why this figure starts to make sense. But talking about the sculpt and the paint, he looks pretty darn good. The head is overly long and very stylized, and so too are the eyes, but it fits in perfectly with this style of body. It is very broad at the shoulders and it comes into a V taper at the waist, and of course every single muscle has been sculpted in. This dude is jacked. He kind of looks like the style of comic book art that we saw back in the 90s where they were just adding muscles on top of muscles. And once again, for this super stylized look for Iron Spidey, I think it works. I have no complaints with the way this guy is sculpted. As for the paint, I'm not entirely sure if the red sections are painted in this glossy red or they're just molded in this color. Either way, it looks great. It's got a depth to it, it's not just a flat basic red, and then of course all of the gold sections are fully painted in this very shiny metallic gold. So yes, if you are looking for an Iron Spider to stand on your shelf and look good in a basic neutral museum pose, this absolutely isn't for you. It's just straight up not going to work. But if you do want to get crazy with your posing, then maybe stick around, this guy might surprise you. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have Iron Spider standing alongside Shang-Chi from Marvel Legends. As you can see, they are roughly the same height. That means that, yeah, you can technically use these in the same display if you wanted to. I personally don't though, because they are two completely different styles of figure. Shang-Chi is going for that more realistic look, and standing straight up and down he looks perfectly fine, whereas Iron Spider is just so out there that it kind of throws off the display. So I personally will only be displaying my Yamaguchi figures alongside other figures from the same line. Just going over articulation on Iron Spider. Now do bear in mind this is my very first time handling an amazing Yamaguchi figure, so if I miss a joint or I use one incorrectly and don't get the fullest range, I do apologize. Now, starting off with the head sculpt, there are multiple joints and pieces at play here, so going forward to about there, which is kinda crazy, going back to about there, which is more than serviceable in my opinion, swivel at the head, but also a ton of range at the base of the neck. So yeah, you're more than covered in terms of head and neck articulation. Now, the way they've done the arms is very interesting. There's a ball joint at the upper part of the bicep and a hinge and swivel at the shoulder. So going up to about there, going forward and back, a ton of range of motion out of that ball joint that kind of acts as a butterfly. So yeah, it's a super unique setup for the shoulders. Now he also has a ball joint and hinge and swivel down here at the forearm, which means you have that same crazy range of motion, but also a bend that goes way past 90. Then you have a ball joint for the wrist. As for the torso, it crunches all the way forward and a significant amount back as well, but if you do extend it all the way, you will have a little bit of gapping, but that's kind of par for the course when it comes to amazing Yamaguchi. The legs themselves will go out to about there. They will go forward all the way up, and this diaper piece is a rubbery thing, so it does nicely move out of the way. You have a swivel, as you can see right here at the thigh, a double bend at the knee, which goes the full way, and then this piece, which is technically the kneecap, is also independently articulated. You have a ball joint at the top of the boot cuff there, another ball joint down here at the ankle, and of course some toe articulation. Just wrapping up on the amazing Yamaguchi Iron Spider, and yeah, it's all in the name, he is amazing, but for some very interesting reasons. I don't think I've ever held or posed a figure that can move quite the way this one does, or has looked quite the way this one does. It's a very unique blend of posability and sculpt that makes for a very unique look here. I personally do like it, but I can't say that this is my personal preferred style of figure. I like to go for accuracy and sculpt and texture and detail over articulation, but I do know a ton of people who mainly focus on posability as their sort of one and only big reason to buy, or in fact to not buy a figure. So maybe this line is for you if that statement connects with you. But for me, I will be cautious with the figures that I do actually pick up from the line. I do have the reissue of Izuku Midoriya on pre-order, and I do plan on picking up Bakugo. I actually do have All Might currently in the collection, but I haven't gotten around to opening him yet. Stay tuned though, I will be reviewing him on the channel very soon. Now if you are looking to pick this guy up, he is available from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is of course down in the description below, and they do have 12-month installment plans if you are a fan of paying off your figures over time. Also, while you're down there, why not check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the awesome Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.